Mr. Brian O'Loughlin,
Hello, sir.
welcome back.
Thank you.
Straight in, what's the meaning of life?
We're going to find out over the next 40, 50 minutes.
So I'll give a brief context to people about this episode here. Thank you for coming back on, by the way.
Thank you.
We recently recorded an episode for your podcast, but mine's going to be released first. So
Yeah, that's
people
confusing.
people can enjoy that. And I think, is it coming out this week? The end of this week?
Mine is coming next week.
Next week. That was a good conversation as well. But
Yeah.
to stay on today's topic, we've spoken at length over the last maybe 3 or 4 weeks. For some reason, it's kept coming up.
Also, like 3 or 4 years.
Also 3 or 4 years,
It's a big topic, like.
This idea of purpose and meaning. And there's been a couple of things that happened in my life recently, one of which was rereading Naval Ravikant's book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, where he talked about the differing perspectives on meaning, the meaning of life, purpose. And I think a lot of the conversations that we have, especially on this podcast anyway, are all about finding some sense of meaning. Like, why are we doing these things? Why are we optimizing our health and going down the road of personal development and building companies and trying to be better people and better fathers and relationships and all that? It all kind of centers around the same thing. It's our search for meaning. Would that be fair to say?
I think so, yeah.
So what we will talk about today, and I've done extensive research for this episode, which is unlike me. So we have lots of quotes and lovely bits to go to here. But what we'll do today is it's transpired that we have not differing views on this, but slightly different perspectives on this in certain areas. So we'll have a bit of dialogue, a bit of back and forth on this idea of purpose, meaning, where we find it, what it means to us. But what I'd like for people to take away from this episode then is, no matter what you believe or where you land on this, is there are, I think, some common things that we have done. And when we were going through our list here about takeaways for people in the episode, a lot of them like crossed over quite heavily with what we have done anyway over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, building all this kind of stuff. So we'll give some takeaways at the end of the episode as well. But to get us cracking, that kind of abstract question, meaning, purpose, for you, what does that look like? What does that conversation look like?
Well, I just Googled, what purpose means. And
Don't say that to the people.
yeah, but just similar words where, like,
to get a definition.
Get a definition, sorry, of the word. I didn't Google the answer. No, but like it was like similar words where meaning, intend, aim, plan. So for me, I suppose, like, the question was like the meaning of life or meaning and purpose in general. So what was the question?
Just when you think about meaning and purpose, and it's like, so that is the question. What is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
Where do you land on a conversation at the moment?
Yeah, I suppose I said to you off podcast is that it's interchangeable, it's constantly changing, it's evolving, and that's really what it means to me. Because meaning and purpose for me has changed throughout my life. And even particularly, say, with Movement 101, we're doing that 6 years. That meaning has changed an awful lot. And I've tried to use that as an avenue to help me develop it more, or kind of go down paths to find more meaning or to find and understand more about myself. So that's kind of my answer, I suppose, is that it's ever evolving, it's ever changing. And I certainly am trying to leverage and use that to progress and ask different questions and learn. That makes sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
How about you? What do you?
With me, I'd never really thought about it very concretely before, but as I said, recently listening to a lot of stuff and having these conversations made me reflect.
Sorry, would you like, because when I was younger, the meaning of life and meaning in general, that would have been a big question I would have had in my teenage years, in my 20s. I don't know if that's a normal thing that people would ask, but for me, that was definitely normal.
I think you're a bit of an outlier there.
Really?
I think let's comment on the landscape today. A lot of people are struggling with meaning in general. A lot of people are struggling to find meaning in the work they do or the lives they live. And there's a lot of listlessness. We talked about this before. There's a lot of people who are lonely, who have no sense of direction. And this is just a general conversation that you would have with people. It's the narrative you would hear if you are open to a wide array of different types of media, if you're not in an echo chamber, that a lot of people kind of are struggling at the moment to find a sense of meaning. We had obviously 3 years of lockdowns and stuff like that, and it highlighted and exacerbated that problem for people. There's issues with mental health, and my personal belief that all centers around identity and purpose and meaning and intent and all this kind of stuff. So when I was younger, as a younger man, I don't think I ever thought about the meaning of life, but I did think about my meaning. So you're very self-centered when you're young. I didn't really think about what is the purpose of this whole thing. I probably thought, because I think we all think we're the center of our universe, especially at that age. We don't really think outside of ourselves.
Today,
even still today, but we have some perspective, I suppose, today.
Yeah.
But when you're young, definitely, when I was young, this idea of my meaning, I want to find meaning in things, and when you don't, it doesn't feel good. So you look for meaning, or you distract yourself to cover up the fact you don't find meaning. So that would have been my general experience, I suppose. I never really thought about it too much. But recently, especially now that we're doing the things we do, as a byproduct of, for example, becoming a better person or being a father or building a business, you're forced to answer a lot of these questions about like, why am I doing this? And again, when we started out and you were helping me kind of in the early stages of Prymal, you were getting me to ask a lot of those questions, like what is it that's important to you and what are the values? And I remember there was a talk that you had with Telos with Kirk Miller, and he spoke about a lot of the, like, what are the things that really drive you to do the things that you do? And I was like, oh, never fucking thought about that before. That's madness.
I think was he talking about like the real primary needs and
the primary needs, yeah. Which again, just another proxy for the same conversation. So like, what are the things that drive me to make the decisions that I make in my life? And if I haven't thought about that, how am I making these decisions? It's based off like reacting or external influences and stuff like that. So that now that question comes up a lot more than it used to for me. But when you go and you have a look at the conversation around this question, and again, Naval's book kind of brought this to the front of my mind. You kind of get two main camps. Now there's smaller subsets in these camps, but there's either this idea that there is a purpose. You are here for a purpose, and it's a divine or a God-given or a bigger than you purpose. And at some point in your life, you'll either discover this purpose or you'll work towards this purpose, and then you'll find the meaning for your life or for life. That seems to be one side of the conversation. Loosely. And then loosely on the other side of the conversation, there seems to be this idea that you can find meaning in many different areas of life. So you can create meaning, or you can change your perspective on something to give it meaning, or you can develop your mind to see meaning in different areas. So that's a lot more kind of self-empowering. And I don't think, for me, it's not a black and white. It's not a left or a right issue. I think there's some crossover there, but I think that's what we'll explore in today's conversation.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair assessment of the situation then?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Because even for me, in terms of those kind of camps, I think there's a clear definition of both, and it definitely gives you a good framework to work from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
So I did a little bit of a dive on this, just because, again, I'm not far from an expert in any of these topics here, but just to give us a kind of a structure and a framework to go through this. So if we start on the kind of divine, kind of God-given idea, a lot of this seems to be attached to religion and spirituality, and the idea that there is a holier purpose than you, and it's preordained, and there's already a roadmap, and you either have to sit and meditate and find it, or do good things until it's shown to you, or you'll come across it on your journey, and then you'll have the meaning. Oh, this is the thing I'm meant to do. The kind of narrative around this and the explanation for this that I was able to find anyway was, it's a lot about that idea of having comfort and a trust in something that's bigger than you, and something you can give yourself to, and something that you can rely on, and it takes away a lot of the fear for people. And I've often thought about this. I'm not a religious person, but I often thought about how valuable some sort of a framework like that is, because it gives you something to go to when you're in the dark, and that hour of need. You can think, well, I have the support of my God or my community, whatever it might be there, so I can trust in that. And in one way, I can see that being very powerful from a psychological point of view, and in another way, I can see it as a massive disadvantage, because it's almost disempowering for depending on what way you look at it. You surrender control to this idea that it's already written in the book. All you have to do is move forward, and you'll find it. And I know you have opinions on that as well, so I'll dip you now in a second. And the benefits of that, I feel like it kind of passes down this idea like of a moral framework or a philosophy that's not a personal philosophy. It is a religious philosophy, but a lot of that stuff is pretty good. Do good to other people and contribute and be helpful, and no greed or lust or anything like that. So I'm not against or against that. I personally don't believe that there's a preordained map from the heavens, but there's some, I can understand, I don't know what's right or wrong here, by the way, this is my opinion, but I can understand why that is a firmly held belief for some people as well. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I suppose with me, the difference is, and my perspective is that I would kind of fall into the idea that I think there could be a preordained kind of purpose for us. I wouldn't call myself religious either, but I do think particularly some people, their quote unquote purpose or their meaning for life is so deep and so clear that I do think that them having this higher purpose or that belief in that gives them a potential and a desire to act that maybe other people wouldn't find if they didn't have that, you know? And then for me, it's, like I said, there's a comfort blanket there as well, because if you do believe that if there's a higher purpose, it's easier to struggle, because life is struggle and it's difficult and there's pain there. I said to you off podcast, for me, when I was in my 20s and you kind of questioned that on me, I wasn't living in line with my values, probably because I didn't know what I valued really deep down. at that age. But I did feel there was more. And then you asked me, like, what was that? And I was like, potential. And you were like, yeah, that's different. And I was like, yeah, okay, like, definitely I had more potential. But I probably did believe I was destined for more. Now, again, what that destination was for more was it a big North Star that was really evident? Like, no, it wasn't. So this is a roundabout way of saying like that, like, I do kind of believe there could be a predestined, like, again, I'm of the opinion, like, is it all mapped out for me already and I think I'm in control? I kind of have that belief a little bit, but that doesn't stop me from doing the work or asking questions, I would say, in my day-to-day life. I suppose the issue I would have is that if you're basing your decisions off, I can or can't do this thing based off this predestined thing, then you could fall more into this kind of victim mentality, potentially. So, look, you can see by me just trying to explain myself, I don't really know what I believe, but I would probably lean into more on the side of there being some kind of higher being or reason for being here. And that definitely gives me a bit of comfort. Like, I would have genuinely, I don't know how old I was, but in my teens and 20s, lied awake at nighttime for the fear of dying, being like, I'm not going to be here. What the hell is that? I was just like a darkness and a vastness of, like, it's just such confusion. And I was like, what the fuck? And as then, I suppose, on my own journey in life, psychedelics have helped me kind of experience things potentially. I've no idea at all what this bigger meaning is, but there's certainly something that I can't explain that I think is potentially kind of navigating and helping me on my journey. So it does bring me comfort in that regard. Am I kind of just talking? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
It does make sense.
I don't really understand it myself, but I do think is on that side, I would lean into it.
No, and again, this is why I think we chose to have the conversation on mic as well, because I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. I've done this research to try and give us some frameworks here, and mostly to try and offer perspectives to people who might be listening who maybe have never thought about this or have thought about this and wanted the opposing perspective. But I'm not 100% sure, and I don't have the answer.
But you do seem to be more sure that this kind of predestined map or plan for us, you don't believe that at all.
Well, not that I don't believe it at all. I just don't think it's an all or nothing game. And just based off what you said there, I've told the story before, but I have tried, obviously I've been involved in some psychedelics and plant medicines, all this kind of stuff. And there was a couple of ketamine therapies that I did before. And the first time the second time I did one of the ketamine journeys, I was granted this sense of knowing. Not, I woke up. No, but I definitely had a sense of, okay, there's more. There's more here to everything than what I thought there was. But what I found interesting was, me as someone who's not religious, I didn't attribute that to God necessarily.
Yeah.
More of a higher energy or something. I can't quite explain what it is. But anybody who came in to do the same treatment who was religious saw God.
Yeah.
It was confirmed for them. They had the same almost reaction as I did, except they called it God. So it's like, this is really interesting. So we're not all on different pages here. Maybe we just have different words for this or different understandings for this. Maybe our human understanding of what God is. We teach children it's a man and he has a beard and he sits on the clouds, because it's easy for a child to visualize that. But as we get older, we realize it's actually more than that. But maybe not developing the more than that is part of the problem here, because maybe I'm resistant to this idea of a preordained thing, because I don't think it's a guy sitting on the clouds telling us this is your purpose and this is your, and if 7 billion of it's 7 billion purposes. Maybe that's why I'm resistant to that. But I definitely can understand that sense of more than. I just am not sure that that's enough to say, okay, well then there's a purpose for me here. Now I know, right? I'm not the center of the universe, and it's not just me. There's more of a connection and a compassion and an energy there.
But then let me ask you the question then. So that there was more. So you wouldn't call it obviously a God. Is there? But if there's a more, surely it's bigger than you.
It's bigger than me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a role outlined for me. I just know that there's more than me. I am not the center of the universe. There's more, and I have a greater understanding of people and energy and compassion and all that kind of stuff. It makes me want to be better. It makes me want to contribute more, which is, we'll get into some of this stuff now as well. But that would be my perspective on it. Again, I don't think there's a right or wrong here. I think it's different perspectives on this, but personally, I don't believe that there's a preordained destiny for each one of us. And to your point then about, you said, I challenged you on the destined word and the potential. I do believe, and I was the same as you when I was younger, I believed that there was more to me. I was able to achieve and do more, and I was held back and limiting myself. But I didn't think that at some point, I'll follow this path and I'll get to this goal. I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to fill out those areas where maybe I believe I have more to offer, more to give, or more to grow. I never did until I hit my 30s.
Yeah.
So it's similar, but that's why I said it would be interesting, because it's not the exact same. There's a different slant on this based on who you are and who you are listening right now. So that would be one side of it. And like, there's a quote I mentioned about Mark Twain earlier on. The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And for me, this idea of the day you find out why, I'm like, I don't know that there is a day. I think you're just constantly finding out why. And I also believe you have an active role to play in that as well. So I don't think there is a day.
Well, I think there could be a day, because it's also like saying
The day you die.
Yeah, no, it could. It's like finding the person you love, and people say they're soulmates. Whereas I would probably believe there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people that I could be soulmates with. So you could have.
Yeah, listen to this podcast.
Yeah, don't tell her. But I'm saying that day could be numerous days. So it could be the birth of your child. It could be when you're in a car crash and you survive. So it's not just that. It's just this one day.
I agree with you on that.
So, but that one day occurs. But this is what I think is interesting about purpose and meaning, is it's ever evolving and changing. So you can have more days. So you find one day, but that's kind of almost the catalyst that changes everything else. And there's plenty more days. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah, I wouldn't be there with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like, that sounds to me like the idea of the emotional heart attack or the spiritual heart attack I spoke about before, is that there's a life-changing event that triggers all these other things. I believe that can happen, but I don't necessarily believe that everybody has to have that one day, or that one day exists for everybody where you're like, oh my God, I've been living my life in vain. Like, it could be a psychedelic experience.
Do you not believe that's for like?
I believe it happens. I don't believe that it needs to happen for everybody. I believe you can change your life and find meaning in things.
No, I definitely believe you can change your life without that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, though, that is there for everyone. I think everyone can and possibly does experience it, whether they kind of know that or they don't. This is what I mean. When it comes to meaning then and purpose, it is that narrative and that talk that we're telling ourselves. So if we don't have maybe some level of awareness around what we're talking about right now, potentially you're missing out on that day.
I would view it as that day is every day, and it's your perspective. It's like the idea of luck is all around you.
Yeah.
But it's only when you start to recognize it and take action that it becomes luck to you. Like, every single day there's opportunities, but we don't grab 99.9% of them. I believe that as well with this kind of thing. Like, you'll eventually may come to the day where things are so bad, it forces a change. You change the trajectory of your life, and you find meaning, etc., etc. You're a born again religious person, whatever it might be. But that, for me, that day it's every day. And depending on your perspective and your mindset, you'll either see it or you won't. And some people will finish their entire life and never ever achieve that day. So this idea that there's a day that you realize what your life is. No, I think we have a little bit more to play in it. A little bit more to play. And because, again, there's no black or white here. Some people will come across that day by doing but some people won't. Or some people will sit and meditate and try and wait for the divine inspiration. So I'm saying, I think if you're a little bit more proactive with it, you'll find that day. But it's all days, in my opinion. I'm talking very metaphorically here.
No, but then if you go into the other camp, then is what you're going to explain now.
Yeah, so the other side of this, and it's not necessarily the other side, it's another perspective on this, another shape on this. And again, a lot of this comes from Naval gave me the words to express the things that were in my head, so he puts a little bit of shape on it. But I think he would say and believe, which would be similar to what I would believe, is that by, number one, developing a deeper understanding of the things that actually drive you as a person, which we spoke about before, and which you helped me with from a business perspective, which has leaked into my life now as well. What are those things that actually you personally find meaning in? Because me and you will be different, and James will be different, and everybody listen to this is potentially different, but we could all find meaning in certain things, and there are many things you can find meaning in. So his whole start point for his kind of his framework here is to figure out what those values are. Number one, and we actually spoke about this in your podcast, which is coming out on Friday as well. So, without that level of understanding, you're never going to be able to consistently achieve those feelings of meaning and purpose. It might be intermittent or random or chance, but when you understand these are the things that really make me feel like I have a sense of purpose or a sense of drive or a sense of meaning, then you can start to make sure that the decisions you make in your life and the things you do are in line with that. So you're opening yourself up to see that day more. Now you can see a lot more of the opportunities that come along in your life where you could do the things that give you that sense of meaning. Make sense?
100%.
So that seems to be his starting point for this. And then he talks about a lot of different methods, I suppose, that you can try that tend to produce reliable results for giving people that sense of meaning. They're all process based. None of them are outcome based. So it's all this idea of creativity and building and enjoying the process and learning about yourself and contributing to the people or your community and doing things for other people and having a sense of compassion and passion, being mindful, being grateful, being present, and all of these things start to contribute to you developing a deeper understanding of what you believe, the life you live, and how to live a life that gives you a little bit more of a sense of meaning. And by practicing this and doing it regularly and having a framework and a practice for doing these things, you can live a life of meaning, as opposed to finding that one day that's going to be divine inspiration. This is what I'm supposed to do. You're finding meaning in all of the things that you do because you're designing the things that you do. And even if you don't design the things that you do, what's gone out of my head there, prison camp, German prison camp, the man's search for meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
Even if you don't design it necessarily, you can still find meaning in the things that you do. And a lot of those things that people tend to gravitate towards are fairly similar, like helping other people or like exploring the fabric of your own mind and understanding what you are and who you are. Psychedelics, Sam Harris, we were speaking, talks about this in a really, really interesting way, are a tool for helping you to do that. I found psychedelics a really helpful tool for quietening a lot of the madness and exposing me to more of the stuff so I can figure out, oh, that's what I actually value. And then when you start to integrate that into your life, it helps you to build more meaning through the things that, like, I was already a dad, but now I find way more meaning in being a dad because I'm more present and I'm more grateful with my children. Now, 1% of what I want to be, but it's already more meaningful to me. I was a dad before and I'm a dad now. So it's not that being a dad was the thing that changed me. But now I'm finding more meaning in that. And by finding more meaning, I'm helping other people. By helping other people, I find more meaning. So it's this cascading effect that creates a life of purpose, I believe.
Yeah.
And that sense of purpose and meaning. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I would agree again. And this is why for me, it's a crazy topic because everything you're mentioning there was what I would lean on for the majority of my time and what I do in life. And if I go back to the principles of Movement 101, responsibility, education, and empowerment. Like, regardless of any of our situations, we fall back to responsibility. It's on us. The education, i.e. we can learn more and get better, and we're empowered to act through either building momentum and getting a result, or again, talking to other people, being in the environment. Like, the list is endless in terms of the growth and the progress you can have in regards to your purpose and meaning with this narrative, basically, or this kind of camp or this side. So I agree with it all. I suppose for me, then it comes back to, because you're mentioning everything there about kind of how to get it. There's difficulty in this, right? So that's what I would fall back on. This is that it's an awful lot of responsibility. That we talked about this in the past about being kind of going from a boy to a man, and can I handle that responsibility? And that's why I think it's quite difficult then for people to act in this way, because you're moving into uncertainty or the unknown, and there's certainly no guarantee of success, quote unquote, whatever that kind of means. And that's where, if we look at the other side, for me, if people can find purpose in this higher divine, or I've been chosen, I think there's an opportunity to delve into the difficulty or the darkness with more intent. And that's why I would kind of fall on both camps. I don't think you can live a life of real meaning without what you've just explained there, this camp of the process, of action, of all those things. But if you're leaning on the other side of, well, this is the day, or this is my reason for being here, I think it's a little bit easier to lean in then to that, So whether that's a religious thing, or again, you've been in a car crash, or you've taken psychic, whatever the hell the thing is, that's a higher divine or purpose. This thing over here is really difficult. And this is the idea of purpose and meaning to me. You always hear about, following your bliss, and it's blissful, and I've never been more clear of my purpose and my meaning in life. And it's really difficult. I still struggle. I'm still asking these existential questions. I don't have all the answers. Who the hell am I? But again, in terms of that actual meaning, I really do feel it, and I live it.
What do you feel?
I feel like a contentment is what it would be. I wouldn't say I feel happy.
But in terms of your purpose, you've never been more clear.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, I feel useful.
Okay.
Is what I would say.
So you feel you have purpose?
Yes.
Not that you have a purpose.
Again, for me, it's interchangeable, but I would say I live with purpose. So again, it's what we would talk about with clients an awful lot. Because again, even you mentioned about being a father, I'm more purposeful in my role as a father. So say there's 3.5 years old, and you were talking about being a better father in the sense of whatever that means to you. Like, I'm more experienced So I even know what I value of being a father than I did when she was first born. You know, I've a business for the last 6 years at Movement 101. I'm much more purposeful in what I do because I'm much more clear of how I want to operate and what I kind of want to do. So again, for me, when it comes to purpose and meaning in life, it's just living in alignment with what I value. And I don't know what I value when I was younger. I don't know until I take action. I don't know until I go down these holes. And sometimes I'm wrong in what I think I value. And this was a big thing for you. You've always questioned me regarding my business and all. Like, wait a second, why? Why are you making that decision? You know what I mean? Are you sure about that? I'm like, oh yeah, well that's a very good question actually. Because I could be just doing this thing that I think I want, or maybe I'm even just doing it because it's a natural thing to do next. Do I actually value this thing? Do I want to do this thing? Because this is bringing me down a path that if I continue down, you know, does it align with who I am and what I want? So this is what I mean. For me, it's kind of both camps or both perspectives. And I don't necessarily mean that higher purpose or that divine is necessary or everyone can have it. But I do see why it's so useful. Because the other aspect of taking that responsibility and being very clear and authentically yourself, I think this is the whole point of all of this, I think our meaning and our purpose is to help us understand ourselves more. And in a world where there's so much noise first and foremost, but also there's so much perspectives and information. Like, who the hell am I to live like I live? Who am I to voice my opinion? Because I am just a fucking bumbling idiot. And that's a difficult thing to step into, you know, to be more authentically yourself. Number one, maybe because you don't know who the hell you are, like I did for a long period of my life. Or now, I do know who I am more, but there's still plenty of fear. There's still plenty of darkness. There's still plenty of work that has to be done in order for me to, you know, be that person and put myself out there, etc. So,
do you believe you are, there's something else I want to ask you as well, because you mentioned adversity there, but do you believe you are unwrapping this hidden gem, and the gem is who you actually really are, and you're just peeling back and finding who you really are? Or do you believe you're adding to this you're stripping away the stuff that doesn't serve you, but you're also at the same time adding layers to yourself, building who you are?
No, I'm stripping away.
So where did that come from? What is that you're going to find, that little golden nugget, that Brian at the center of all that?
I don't think I'm going to find Brian. I just think we're all doing this. I think that's what meaning and purpose is. You're stripping away more and more the self-limiting beliefs or your past experience, or because again, you can find purpose and meaning in anything, like literally in exercising and doing whatever. So yeah. I don't think it's just like, for me, it's not this big grade or define one purpose, but that thing can help me drive to find a purpose.
So this is why I'm asking you when you say I'm finding myself. I'm becoming more of myself. That myself, what is that?
Yeah. Well,
what do you find?
Well, let's go back to it then, because you were saying there about psychedelics and there's something bigger. I think there is all this oneness, and this is what I mean.
Okay.
So I think we're all this oneness, and this is, so if you look at that kind of bigger purpose and that North Star that I'm talking about, maybe we all have that one North Star. Now, it can be wrapped in different kind of guises and businesses and presence and action steps, but deep down, we strip it away, and you're getting more authentically yourself. And when you realize, oh, geez, we're all the kind of same people here. We're all kind of, so again, is that a bigger purpose? So maybe, and I'm just thinking this right now as we're talking, maybe that bigger purpose is to bring us all back to realize that's like, oh, Jesus, we're completely all the same. You know, deep down.
Why would we need to realize that?
Because the noise and the distraction and the concerns and, you know,
they're all symptoms of modern life. But like if we all got back, what would happen? Would it be a restoration of equilibrium in the universe? Yeah. Would God be saying, yes, you did it, guys?
Yeah, maybe. I have no idea. I don't know.
I have a thought that came to me just as your thought came to you. So my maybe on this is that is how we live a more maybe that's how we fully embrace the human experience when we are in connection like that. Maybe there's not like okay, you did it, thumbs up, that is the purpose, but maybe that is what allows us to say, me and you are now, and I would estimate these are probably accurate figures if we were if there's any way of doing this, we're probably experiencing 13% of life. Okay. In terms of how we could actually feel right now, how present we could actually be, how grateful we could be, how connected we could be, how switched on we could be, how much I'm experiencing that mouthful of water I just took. Yeah. This touching the wood here, this experience right now, we're probably experiencing a really, really, really low version of that. So maybe the more we go into this, it allows us to experience more of what this could be, not should be, should it suggest that
a bit higher divine. Yeah.
But this could be a better experience. Whatever amount of years we have here, this experience could be better, and that by extension will make other people's experiences better. But that's not necessarily the goal here. It's just to fully embrace the human experience, whatever that might be. Maybe that's just as you were speaking, that's maybe the thought that came into my head.
Well, that's kind of that's as you say that now, because I would go back to psychedelics, and we always have to fall back to psychedelics, don't we? I had this feeling of consciousness under ayahuasca, and for me to explain what that is nearly impossible, because I just can't explain it. But basically, I just was.
Yeah.
And what that means, I don't even know. I was present. It was orgasmic, sad. I just was. I was just this being, and there was nothingness. And I think, again, if you kind of go back to what all of this is, it's like you're almost kind of stripping away, and then presence, and there's more of just being.
Yeah.
And we have talked about this of like, as we kind of delve more into what we're interested in, or maybe being more authentically ourselves, like I have more moments of just sitting with Sailor and just being present. Now, I'm not purposely trying to be present. I'm just living my life. I just feel this, like, again, would I call it love?
You mentioned that to me the other day.
Yeah, would I call it love, or I don't know what I'd call it, but I just call it a presence. And it's like,
you're just being.
I'm just being. And I'm not doing it in an intense manner. I'm literally just being. And it just feels so like amazing. And again, I can't even really explain it. But I kind of find the more I lean into me and this meaning and this purpose, this difficulty, all these questions that we're asking right now, it's like I'm stripping away the bullshit, and it's helping me just to have more of those experiences that only last 5 seconds, 10 seconds, not long, but they're more regular than they certainly were in my 20s.
Sam Harris describes this, but I'm not like you, a Harris fanboy. I wouldn't agree with him on some of the stuff, but he describes this state of mind very well. And I haven't listened. You said you're going to send me a video, and we might throw it in the show notes as well, of him describing his own psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
But he spoke recently on Modern Wisdom about achieving this state, and you can use psychedelics or breathwork or whatever it is, go into the dark cave. But it's realigning your nervous system to allow you to feel that sense of presence and being. And the way he described it really resonated with me, because I'm like, that to me sounds like a fuller experience. So like
of life.
Okay. So like you when you spoke about there with the awakening and the ayahuasca and stuff like that, I've experienced that as well. This feeling of, oh yeah, it's what I referred to there with the ketamine as well, when you're like, oh, there's more to this, and it's not me and all the things I tell myself, this idea of ego dissolution, that's all gone, and you're like, oh, there is more. Oh, okay. And Harris explains this really well in terms of that is a state that we can get to, but the trick then is to live that, and that's what everyone talks about, integration. You have to actually do the work, and it's not just about the thing, it's about how you bring the thing into your life. But for me, that's what I think about with this whole thing. Like, the more I can live that, the more meaning I feel. I live in a life of purpose and meaning. And along with that, what we mentioned earlier, lining that up with the things that I find give value, or I find valuable. If I'm doing all of that regularly, I'm filling more of that space. I'm experiencing more of this human condition. I'm being more. And when you mentioned to me the other day, I said, I don't experience that as much, that intently, but as a whole, as a net, I'm experiencing more of that purpose in all of my life. And then you asked me a question earlier on the phone about, is Prymal my purpose? And I'm like, again, I don't think there is my purpose, but I'm finding more purpose in my life by doing this thing. And then I was looking through this stuff by Naval. I was like, because I'm being creative and I'm having an impact and I'm helping people, I'm taking responsibility. And these things are giving me more meaning. And then when I look at the comment they made at the very start about a lot of people, and I'll say specifically men nowadays as well, not finding that meaning, is because our society has completely changed, and it's no longer about finding meaning. It's about external metrics of success. And this brings us back to a more superficial conversation about, it's all about the money and the houses and the cars and the Instagram and all that kind of crack. And it's very, very, very difficult to find meaning in any of that stuff, because it's not intrinsic and it's not lined up with most of our values. So we feel a little bit meaningless. It's not that there is no meaning out there, it's that we're not finding the meaning anymore. We don't have a set of tools or a structure or a framework to find that meaning. You mentioned, sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say then, because even as you're talking there, if we're looking at all those external, and there's constantly always more, because there's always more money, there's always more followers, always more of this external, we maybe don't give ourselves the space to ask these questions that we're asking right now. Because again, me and you are always just having these conversations. So it's not just more for the sake of more. It's not just building the business for the sake of building the business. It's like, do I really want to do this? Is this like authentically myself? Am I building something that, is genuinely me? And that's what I would always say. I hope it comes across my business is an extension of me. Because I really do try, me and Rob really try and build even the the coaches that we have on board are very much aligned with our vision and who we are. We don't have to, quote unquote, teach them or train them to do what they do because they're just living and they completely understand how we operate. And again, I'll use my business as an extension of my development and to help me find more meaning and find more purpose.
You said something to me before. You said earlier on as well about there is no business or personal. It's all one thing. Talk to that a little bit there.
Well, that's what I just found with business. Like, so again, some of my best mates, i.e. you, right? So we got to know each other.
We best friends?
We're best friends, man. But we got to know each other through business, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And now we're best mates. I hope I'm your best friend as well. But like, we're really good mates now, and it's nothing really to do with business. Like, business was the tool that allowed us to meet and start to converse and get to know each other and build a relationship. And I would have always had this real big thing, I think people do in general, of your personal life and your professional life. And it's almost like separate. And then I just realized now over the last kind of 6 years building Movement 101, it's like, oh no, wait a second. It's all just time. And it's how we choose to spend that time. It's how we choose to do what we do. People always ask me like, how do you work? How many hours do you work? What days do you work? I'm like, I kind of do something every day. I'm not saying the way I do it is the best way. I can definitely be better at switching off, etc. But I'm just trying to spend my time how I get energy and how I really enjoy doing it. So I really enjoy doing all this stuff. I did all this stuff for years before Movement 101 was around. I was reading all this stuff, training and doing. And I on my quote unquote free time, I do this. But it's not free time. It's not separate from me. So it's just me living. And again, living with purpose. I'm trying to step forward and make decisions for my business, for example, that are authentically what I want and not just for the external, which is difficult. I don't say I get it right all the time. But there is no kind of separate, if that makes sense. And even if you look at Naval, like Naval's constantly talking about this, that he doesn't work with certain people unless he kind of has the same values or that they get on very well. He's not going to go into business just because he's going to get this external result.
Find long-term people to play long-term games.
Yeah. And again, even he mentions, I think we talked about it off podcast, find work that is play to you and looks like work to other people. And that's kind of what I'm doing now, and you kind of understand more about, because ultimately, again, go back to that difficulty of life and meaning and purpose. It's so difficult that if you don't find the playful nature or things that you value, I don't think you're going to do the work when it's really difficult, because it's really difficult. Like me doing that and the way I live right now, it's really difficult, but I get great meaning and great purpose. And again, it allows me to understand myself more. So it's worth the struggle.
Yeah. And I thought of an interesting, to build on that perspective, which I think is lovely, even if you're listening right now, and because I think about like 9-to-5 jobs or normal jobs that you didn't necessarily pick or go into because it's a passion you made, or maybe a financial decision, or you fell into it, or whatever. If you're doing a job that you didn't necessarily decide, this is the thing for me, you can still find meaning in that. And the meaning you find is by being the best version of yourself while doing that thing. Now, obviously, my personal belief is if you're doing something that you really don't want to do and you have decisions that you can make to maybe move out of that, maybe not now, but in the next 5-10 years, whatever like that, I believe you should start thinking about that. Tim Ferriss is a great resource to go to if you're thinking about that kind of thing. But even if you can't get out of the job right now, financial situation, personal situation, whatever, this whole idea of you can find meaning within that, because you're doing 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. That's a lot of time to do something that you have no meaning or purpose attached to, or even worse, that you hate. So to be able to find meaning, you often hear this conversation about like flipping burgers or doing spreadsheets or whatever it might be, that there might be no inherent meaning for you or anybody else except for the company you're working for. But take the burgers, like you're going to prepare food for somebody else. You can find meaning. I'm going to flip the best damn burger ever. Now this sounds a bit patronizing, but when I think about this, I really go, yeah, because there's loads of stuff that I do right now that
Well, sorry, can I just take it to because you've talked about this to me a few times. You may have mentioned it on podcast. When you're training with the GA team, you have to go around the cone.
Yeah, the cone, yeah.
So, but you're not going to skip here, because the meaning here is like I'm putting the work in. And if I'm skipping that cone, I'm bullshitting myself and don't dare think the game day comes and I miss that tackle.
Exactly. I don't want to go around the cone, and other people aren't going around the cone. But if I decide to go around the cone, I'm giving the cone more meaning than just going around the cone. I could not go around the cone and not get caught, or I could go around the cone or knock around the cone and get caught, whatever. It's not about that. It's about if I give it a meaning. If I do this, it means that I have discipline. I follow the orders.
You're putting the work in.
And that gives me more. Okay, yes.
Belief and more.
So now these really hard training sessions, I'm like, right, there's a real purpose for this. And that's maybe a superficial one, but yeah, 100% same thing. But go back to the burger flipping as well. You can find a meaning in that. You can find a meaning in the job that you're doing that might not necessarily like, or the situation that you're in. Again, that's the Viktor Frankl thing. Like you can find meaning in these things that makes your life more meaningful, even if you can't necessarily change your situation. Easy for me to say when I'm not necessarily in a situation that I can't change. But most people listening to this are not necessarily in a situation that can't change. And I always use this caveat as well. Some people are. Some people can't change their life or their situation. But you can change the meanings and the stories that you tell yourself around those things, which will help change the fabric of your mind and how you interpret it, and then your sense of purpose and meaning, so you can live a purposeful life. Like I often think about, the one I always use is having a dependent. My God, I can think of very few things more difficult than having someone who depends on you 24/7, someone who's sick, or someone who's got developmental issues, or a child or something like that, who depends on you all the time. I can't imagine how hard that is. But there's a meaning in there as well. Like you're literally helping this person live a better life. You're doing something outside yourself. You're being selfless. There's massive meaning to be found there. I'm not saying it makes it any easier, but I'm saying there is meaning to be found there as well. And
I think I've said this before as well, but Peterson always talks about at your dad's funeral for a man. So it's an awful situation. One of the people that you love have died. Everyone's very, very sad. And what we can do is find real meaning and purpose in that and go, well, I'm going to organise the funeral. So this situation is disgracefully bad. It's awful. I'm extremely sad, but let's not make it any worse. Let's just step up to the plate. Let's just take action and take control of this awful situation. And it's the same thing. Nothing has changed. Yeah. The death has still occurred, but that meaning and that purpose, for me, potentially, has just massively changed. And I think, again, go back to that idea of responsibility and education, even just having this conversation, that's what I think is so important, is building the awareness around what you do day to day. Because you talked about maybe just doing a job that you can do in your sleep that you don't even have to think about. So you could potentially just not be doing that with purpose because you don't need to. And this, the joys, as you know, as being an entrepreneur or having your own business, we can't do that because we're going to fail. Like there's people, we have to lead, we have to create. If we don't get the work done, and this is why it's really difficult to be your own boss, because it's just so excruciating when you don't do the work or you plan to do it and you fucked up again. You're like, oh my God. But at least there is real meaning and purpose, and you start to understand yourself more and you start to lean in more. But again, take it as a father, take it as a relationship, your strength training. Again, a lot of times I don't want to train. I couldn't be arsed. But I'm going to have real meaning and purpose in this. I know I'm better in terms of my performance. I know it's good for my health in the next 10, 20, 30 years. I want Sailor and my kids to value health. I want them to see me do a run or a session when I don't want to. I'm just flipping the meaning and the narrative around me doing something that's really, really difficult. I just don't have the motivation. It doesn't make it really that much easier, but it certainly gives me to get up and go on the vast majority of days when I couldn't be arsed.
That really leans nicely actually into the point. I'm going to bring you back, you said, about adversity and doing difficult things, and having this sense of maybe there's a bigger meaning to this makes it easier to do the thing, but also doing the thing makes it easier to have a sense of purpose and meaning. So there's a quote here, and I don't actually know who this is, so I won't claim I know who this is. I come up when I was doing a bit of research. Jean de la Bruyère, and apparently Jean de la Bruyère is a French philosopher. But the quote is, "Out of difficulties grow miracles," and it was the word miracles that got me there. So this idea of the magic divine purpose. When you work through adversity and you put yourself in difficult situations, all of a sudden these things start to come to you. Like you said to me before, this idea of what comes up, and it was a Damien Brown talked about what comes up when you used to do with your hard runs and stuff like this. When you go through difficult things, you gain a different perspective on life, and it's almost like a miracle has happened. You see life in a different way, in a different perspective, almost like there has been like a miracle magic, this divine intervention here. Oh my God, now I see that all these things I was worried about don't actually matter, and this is what matters. And then by having that, it makes it easier for you to do the thing. So it's like a two-sided sword there that you can wield yourself. So whether you start believing that there's a divine purpose and it wants you to do this hard workout, or you start by doing this hard workout and it leads you to a situation where your mind can see a lot more of this day that's going to change your life. You can see it a lot more and take the opportunity a lot more. It doesn't really matter once you're accepting that it's a good thing to go through difficult challenges. Adversity is a good thing, and it can lead to you finding more meaning in life. So it doesn't really matter what camp you're in, same kind of outcome, which seems to be similar for a lot of these things we're talking about here. But just you saying that there, you don't want to do the workout, but you know by doing the workout, there's more meaning in other areas of your life, as opposed to someone else who might say, oh, well, look, my purpose is to be a better, stronger, fitter, healthier person. So I'll do the workout.
And you know what, as well, because just go back to that, the only way I was able to kind of create that meaning or go into that difficulty was by me not doing it.
And feeling the pain.
Yeah. I wasn't strong. I wasn't healthy. I didn't feel 100%. I couldn't go for a run. I felt weak. It began to negatively impact my performance elsewhere. So only through me like doing something and then not doing it, not getting the result, I was like, well, actually, wait a second. This really difficult thing that sometimes I don't want to do, if I do it and find a way through that difficulty, I get a better outcome. So it's worth my while to do it. And just because I might give an old shout out to my email list. You should join my email list if you haven't been on my email. Because I sent an email.
You've already mentioned tell us in this podcast.
Yeah. I sent an email today to my email list. And one of the points was we need what is difficult. So I wrote, because I was writing on this over the last couple of weeks, if you want our children to be resilient, we can't do everything for them. If you want our children to understand the importance of courage, we have to let them struggle. If you want our children to look after themselves, we need to let them make mistakes and learn. So we earn through the difficulty. And but that's really difficult because I have a child.
Yeah.
I want to look after Sailor. I don't want her to be confused and fail. But if she wants to get all those traits, like she has to go through all these things. And even just for me, that's why rather than me have to tell her what's going on, I just understand now that if I can do really difficult things and she can see it, that she might just latch onto it. So I really, just this exercising thing in front of her, like I think I said to you the other day, but going for a run. I was sitting there with Danielle and Sailor, and I was like, fuck, I have to go for a run. I'm exhausted. And Danielle was like, just relax. I was like, no, fuck that. Doesn't mean I can't go. And Sailor was like, Dada, you don't have to go. And I was like, it's okay, baby. Dada can still go on this run, even though he doesn't want to do it. And it's just a more meaning for me to be like, I'm going to definitely do this run, like, you know? And I went on the run, and half that was her just being there going like, all right. And if I just keep doing that for the next year, 2, 3, 4, she's seeing me do something really difficult that I don't have to necessarily do, that I don't want to do, but I know I'm going to get great benefit from. And that's just teaching her through that action. So go back to that meaning. For me, being a father, it's given me real purpose to do harder and difficult things, to make the decisions I mentioned on my podcast, but not drinking alcohol and all that. And a lot of that was to do with being a father. So I'm going to create that narrative and that meaning. So again, if I go back to that higher purpose, I would use the father thing as my North Star that I've been given. Now, I chose that and all that, but that's my North Star. But then the other aspect of it, of me taking the responsibility, doing all the difficult things as well, because I'm not the perfect father. I don't always get it right. It's difficult being a father. But I'm using that father thing as my North Star. Is that allowed?
Oh, everything goes. There's no right or wrong here. I would argue, though, that you have, because of all the work you've done on yourself and the pain you felt in the past, you now strive towards this. And it's so interesting you bring that up, because literally maybe an hour and a half ago, Jill sent me a voice note and she was dropping Jason into creche. And most days he bounces in, and today for whatever reason he didn't want to go in. So she usually sits with him until he feels he's oh cool, and he'll wander off. But she was in a rush today and she had to go to work, so she sat with him for a while, but he wasn't kind of letting go, so she had to send him in anyway. And he went in, he kind of had the head down, the big fat lip and stuff. And when I heard that, like my heart was breaking. I was just, let's just go get him and give him a cuddle. And Jill was like the same. She felt so bad, but I now understand that there's going to be times where he has to go through difficult things. And I only understand that now because I've started to think about what my values are and what maybe I would like his values to be and my daughter's values to be. Without having thought about that, there's a danger we'd over coddle the child and he would have a much more difficult life, or without thinking about it, we wouldn't even recognize moments like these as potential, not this specific moment, but moments where we want to intervene, but know that it's best if we allow them to go through the challenge. We wouldn't even recognize
I don't know if you've mentioned it on the podcast, because you've talked about this around like your own father and your own.
Yeah, I mentioned it once before on the podcast, yeah. And like I always clarify, I one of the best childhoods ever. My parents are amazing to me, but I feel like I didn't have enough adversity. I'm actually going to speak, I think I'm going to speak with Ian about this on his podcast as well, because we come from completely different backgrounds. And I had a fantastic childhood, but almost too good in terms of I didn't have really any, like the normal, whatever most kids go through, but I didn't have major adversity in my life. So it led to me being a 30-year-old having to really figure out, like, Jesus Christ, I have to, one, put some challenges in front of myself and overcome them to really achieve this sense of masculinity that I want, that I feel like I need in my life. And that's just my personal experience. So I'm very aware of that now with my children too. I know why my parents did everything for me, because I want to do everything for my kids. I want to protect them from all the bad things. I want to coddle them. I want them to feel happy all the time. I want them to have no challenges. I want to just hold them in my arms the whole time. But now I know from personal experience that might not necessarily lead to them being as happy or as content or as safe in themselves as they possibly could be. So I'm gonna have to try and find that balance.
And I had a very similar experience. Like, my dad was great and did an awful lot for me. It was only about 4 or 5 years ago when I burnt myself out, and remember being so mentally in a terrible place, and everyone trying to help me. I went on for 2, 3, 4 months, and my dad, after 2, 3, 4 months, like looking at me scared, going, I don't know what to tell you. And I just realized that this lad is just a bumbling idiot like I am. And even now, again, I'm a father and I'm just doing my best. And I realized that, Sailor's going to have to look after herself eventually. So, like, again, it doesn't make any of these decisions easier. But again, building awareness around what you want, I think, makes it easier to start to script more meaningful narrative for us to do these difficult things.
Coming over to the dark side now. You're coming out to my side here
No,
now.
because it's still both sides.
Okay,
But again, I think the other side is different. But I think fundamentally, this kind of responsibility element and doing the work and the difficulty, it's just so necessary.
Yeah.
For that meaning and that. Go back to Viktor Frankl. Like, he talked about people just finding purpose in these concentration camps. That was awful.
Yeah.
But the purpose could be very, very simple. But the fact that there was something that was giving them meaning gave them real purpose to get through the absolute awfulness. And that would kind of make sense, because you see people just do phenomenal feats of physicality, or again, get through the hardest things in life because there's some meaning and narrative there.
This would be the classic pushback to this idea of God or a divine purpose. Is if God, now these aren't my words, again, I don't really know where I stand like firmly on this whole thing, but if there is a God and there's a divine meaning for everybody, why do children get cancer? Why do people go to concentration camps? Why do people die? Why do horrible things happen? And maybe that's just their purpose and their meaning. So for me, I'm like, I don't know if the argument holds water on either side. I think that's what's the word used there, a trite argument. I don't think that it's a particularly strong argument on either side for that. I don't think there's a black and white here. But that's what you would hear, like, why are people in concentration camps? But whether you are in a concentration camp or not, you can find meaning in either getting up at 5 a.m. and shoveling snow, or flipping your burger, or even in your life now, if you're not in a particularly difficult situation, but you're a little bit listless and there's no real sense of purpose, you have everything you need and there's no challenge and drive, figuring out why and then making changes in your life to address that is in your control. And then once you make those decisions, you can feel more of that sense of meaning. As you said, without anything else changing, without the situation changing, without the funeral changing, you can still find more meaning and purpose in those situations, no matter what that situation looks like. So this goes for the worst of the worst in the concentration camp, and the multi-billionaire who has everything but still feels no sense of meaning. There's still meaning to be found in all of those different areas. Obviously, probably a little bit easier then if you have billions of dollars. But yeah, I firmly believe there is a good portion of this that is in our control, and it comes down to perspective. Perspective is a big thing. What I'm going to do is, because we're coming up to the hour here, which is really, really nice because we're not rambling too much here.
Okay.
I'm going to just fly through the few bits that I found, kind of going through Naval stuff and stuff like that, where he would kind of talk about finding meaning, and then what we'll do is we'll give maybe some actionable points that people could try themselves if they want to do some of these exercises as a roundup here. And also, James, get yourself ready, because I'm going to ask you to kind of lean in on this as well at some point. I'm actually going to sneeze here.
Again, you didn't. Highly unprofessional on my podcast. You started sneezing and coughing. It's disgraceful.
I did one cough.
It's disgraceful as a podcaster.
I was also trying to run the podcast myself. And so the Naval side of things, he talks about these just headlines, and you can kind of flesh them out as you see fit. But finding internal fulfillment. So obviously we touched on that, not externalizing this sense of success or fulfillment. The process over the outcome. I think everything we spoke about there today is like, yeah, you can be guided by your North Star if you want to have a North Star, but it's not the outcome. There is no, in my opinion, there is no the day. It's every day. So the process is where you can find the meaning. Every day can you get up and find meaning in what you're doing today.
And can I just quickly say, because that's not to say that we don't get lost in the external, and even being quote unquote on purpose or having a meaning, that you don't get lost in these other things, because I find with clients, when it comes to change, physical change in particular, or say following a diet, it's kind of all or nothing. So when they fall off, it's like, oh well, that's fucked. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So we fall off, but the idea is you can build awareness around that and realize that no, it's okay. I can get back on track again. I just think that's important to.
And also, what do they say? The likes of James Clear and stuff like that. Like, you don't lose the weight, become the person who loses weight. make it part of your identity, give it some meaning for yourself in your life, and then the process is much easier. If it's all about the 5 pounds, it's going to be so hard to lose and keep off the 5 pounds. If you just become the person who's doing these exercises and the person who eats healthily and the person who has better habits around alcohol and the person who sleeps better, you become this person, the outcome takes care of itself. But now there's meaning in all those different things, because I am a person who sleeps well because I value my health. I value my health, therefore I sleep better, not I want to lose weight. So that idea, it exists in a lot of the modern self-help books as well, but it comes back to this idea of meaning and purpose too, I find. And process of the outcome is a big, big one. Purpose through creation. So that's what you mentioned earlier on. We can't not feel a lot of this stuff, because if we don't, the fucking business fails. So it's a very, very clear metric for us. Like month to month, we know, shit, I'm not doing my shit.
And did we say that about business on the podcast before? That, well, certainly for me anyway, I think 90% of businesses fail within the first year, and 90% of that 10% fail within the second year. And I genuinely believe that people struggle to answer these existential questions that we have to answer because they're so fucking awful. Nothing to do with the scale of the business or whatever. It's just the what it reveals to you and your inadequacies or your self-limiting beliefs, or, you know, it can be difficult, but also, again, that meaning, that purpose, what you get from it can be good.
I think I was about two and a half years into business when I said that to you as well. I was like, I firmly believe this stat is people failing. It's we can't answer these questions. I don't think it's the economy wasn't right for another coffee shop or fucking whatever. I think it's people, because you come up against these questions, you're like, holy fuck, I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And then you have to correct your self-talk. I'm not a piece of shit. I just haven't figured this out. I'm being very nice to myself this week. Understanding yourself. Sorry, purpose through creation was the last one. So businesses and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be a business, content, product, idea, relationship, community, whatever. It doesn't have to be a business. Understanding yourself kind of comes back to that idea of self-awareness and introspection. And like we talked earlier on about, are we uncovering this nugget, or are we just trying to understand more and add layers to ourselves?
And values as well.
Values, exactly.
Which I think is a massive one, because I think, unfortunately, the responsibilities of life, again, kids, mortgage, etc., potentially your values have shifted over the last 5 or 10 years, yet your action steps haven't. So you're just not living in alignment with that.
Yeah.
So you might find it hard to have that meaning or that purpose, because, you know, deep down, you're not really sure of exactly what you value or living that. And that would have happened to me with that kind of burnout. You know, you think you're doing this thing and you end up kind of burning out because you're exhausted and you're losing that meaning, but you're not really living in alignment with those values. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, I don't know, was it on or off podcast earlier on? That's in constant flux. It's always changing. So you have to constantly be on top of that and constantly be understanding and having a practice for reflecting. This next one is interesting. I won't get too lost in this because we're coming close to that hour mark now, but balancing ambition and contentment. And actually, interestingly enough, I think it was on that recent podcast with Sam Harris as well. They talked about this. There's a big part of this whole conversation centers around being grateful and being present. But how are you supposed to maintain that ambition and drive to, like, if it's the company, to grow the bigger company, or to hit the next metric, or to be the next person, or to be a better version of yourself if you're just perfectly happy who you are right now? So finding that balance between the drive, the ambition, the goal, the momentum, the motivation, and the gratitude and the peace and the being is very, very important. He gives a suggestion here that the pursuit of goals should not overshadow the ability to appreciate the current stage of life. So there is a balancing act to be found there. You don't want to just do nothing and not move forward, because, as we just said, everything is constantly changing. And if you're not moving, if you're not changing, if you're not reflecting, you're going to be left behind. It's going to get stale, and you're eventually maybe going to fall out of that sense of meaning or purpose. But also, if you overshoot and you're just focusing on the next thing all the time, you never have a chance to be present and actually enjoy the process. So again, it's kind of that process.
And that's probably the hardest thing, I think, as a business owner, or kind of stepping into goals in general. Because if you are, and I would value like growth and progress in terms of my life, you know, you can get lost in the external or the goals themselves. But again, I think it's good to ultimately learn more about yourself and kind of where you're going. Like,
for sure. And the next point, continuous learning and growth, like you said there.
But I think that is huge, because especially with children, anyone who has children will definitely resonate. Just their curiosity for life and just things in general. And potentially, I think, again, the responsibilities of life stop us being curious and learning, or maybe even our egos. Because I talked to you as well off podcast around starting again or being a beginner in a new domain or something. And I'm not saying I find it easier, but certainly I don't want to let my ego get in the way of asking questions or learning from somebody, because I am good in one area of my life. And I think that's where that curiosity and that creativity ultimately come, if you're willing to be a beginner again in something. Like Connor mentioned that actually when we went for a run.
Yes, he did. We went for a walk that turned into a fucking mountain run. And also, the more you're exploring, the more you're opening yourself up to more opportunities to find meaning in. Because if you're only existing in a very, very straight line and you're not stepping off that path every now and again, you're not going to find new opportunities. This more of these days where you could potentially find more meaning and purpose. And the chances are, the older you get, the more we become kind of ensconced in our habits and routines.
Ensconced? What does that mean?
Ensconced.
Ensconced.
So, oh God, I do know what it means, but I'm struggling to find another word to describe it. Kind of solidified and encapsulated in the way we think and the way we believe. So, like you, the ego would kind of force us to stop learning and looking outside our blinkers because we're not going to be good at these things.
Okay.
But we might find meaning in the things that are outside our normal purview. So it gives us more exposure to potential to find purpose and meaning. I think the more we continue to learn and grow, it's not about being better.
Yeah.
It's also about experiencing more things. And again, it's about having more of this human experience, I believe, too. Like there's a lot of benefits to me to continue to grow and being a beginner and being a newbie again. So I like that point there. Mindfulness and presence, which is obviously something we spoke about, but the ability to have that stillness we spoke about in your podcast, actually, so we won't go too deep in it, but that idea of peace and stillness is where a lot of this stuff comes from, is where you can actually find your values and your
well, even you mentioned about kind of ideas and creativity.
Yeah.
They often come when you're more peaceful rather than kind of forcing things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very difficult thing as well when you're trying to progress down avenues or hit goals. It can be all action. And then we find that I certainly find it difficult to be quiet or peaceful, but certainly the practices and systems I put in place over the last couple of years have been purposely to try and find peace.
Yeah.
And then from there, allowing things to happen almost.
And you can see how that would overlap with maybe the alternative perspective here, the divine perspective too, because there's a thought that if you sit and meditate and think, it'll
pray.
Pray.
Prayer is essentially meditation.
Exactly. That you'll get this you'll
hear and you'll get
the voice and the God and all that. So there's definitely a crossover there as well. So again, I think it's a muddy.
And even a lot of people would pray, and that would kind of turn into gratitude, or again, it builds awareness around kind of what you want or about people and your values. So like again, I'm not religious, but certainly religion again is such a good framework. To help you build awareness around who you are and what you want.
For sure, 100%. So that idea of peace is nice. And then defining success in your terms, again, not externalizing stuff. True success should be aligned with your personal values and desires. So all wrapped up in a little bow there. So that would be Naval, how he broke it down. Sometimes I like going to him for stuff like this because he thinks about a lot of different perspectives and brings it together. And then I was able to look at that and say, okay, well, he's missing this one, but this is one I didn't think about before. So,
and also he's had an awful lot of external success. So potentially, you know, he's like financially free and he's got freedom in his life. So the things that we're often searching and looking for, he has quote unquote achieved.
Yeah.
So now he's gone, well, wait a second, there could be other things kind of think
That's
about.
what he said, isn't it? Let's get everybody rich and then get them happy, because he said this idea, this fucking thing that we're on. Two perspectives. One, if you're very, very poor and you're struggling, there's no space in your life for these existential questions. And then number two, if you're caught in this constant struggle for more money, then again, you're externalizing this idea of contentment, happiness, success, purpose. So his idea of getting everybody rich is, if you get everybody rich, money's off the table then. It's not holding you back and it's not the main driver of your focus. Now we can actually focus on finding that peace and contentment and meditating and stuff like that. And he's done it, which is why like don't listen to me, I haven't fucking done it. Listen to someone like him who's done it. He's got the money and now he's saying, right, it's not the money, but get it if it'll take it off your mind. But then let's focus on finding the purpose.
But then go back to what we're trying to do here. We're trying to learn from someone who's done it, because we are on our own path, and we're like, okay, wait a second, there's different questions that we could ask. And someone who is more successful than we are saying it's not this thing. So can we then just go trudge down different paths or ask ourselves different questions day to day? And this is what I love about learning. And even we talked about it. Maybe James, you might come in here with El Marcus Aurelius. It's like all these things are known for thousands of years, you know, these questions, existential questions we're asking, and the new information isn't actually so new. It's just maybe more noise and said in a different way. Fundamentally, these questions are the same and have been since humans have been around.
100%. Right. On that note, let's bring the man himself in.
Hello,
Mr. James Henton. The different perspectives. So you actually mentioned something interesting the other day, but rather than me put words in your mouth, would you like to weigh in on this conversation here? Where do you sit currently in your life? Because remember, it can change. I'm not going to hold you to this in 10 years' time.
It's quite interesting, though. I think it's a very interesting topic, purpose and reason for being. When you were getting into the conversation, there's something that came to mind, and it's a Japanese term. And you probably heard it before, but it's ikigai. Have you ever heard it before? Ikigai?
Don't know.
Yeah.
No. But what it basically is in English, it means reason for being.
Oh.
Which means purpose. All right. And it gives this framework. It gives it's like this graph, and there's like circles within circles, and inside of the circles, it's like what you do for others, what skills do you have, what aligns with your values, and basically how could you earn an income from it as well. And it's a really interesting framework. And I think you can find purpose in many ways. Like you could find purpose in looking after your cat, or looking after your kids, or the pursuit of your job, whatever it is. I think all of us have some purpose, because if we didn't have that, what's our North Star? What's our reason for being here? So that's kind of my insight.
That sounds like you prepared for this conversation.
It's almost like you're talking. But you go back to that. I was just saying there, but the Japanese, and again, I'm pretty sure thousands of years old. That framework, James. Yeah. So, do you know what I mean? So those questions and those frameworks have been around for the test of time, and we're still questioning what it is we should do, or finding that meaning, that purpose. And it's just crazy how you're still asking the same things over and over and over again, no matter how much we have progressed.
Because it's centered around you. That's why they had these thoughts years and years ago, but you're living in this moment right now, so you're asking these questions for yourself.
Yeah.
All you have is right now, And what's also interesting is we have the benefit right now of everything that went before us. But what about in another like 100,000 years? They're gonna have this podcast, this piece of wisdom here to go back and listen to. But they're gonna have another 100,000 years of wisdom. I wonder, will it change at all? Because the more people that go before us, the more we get to look back and say, well, okay, well, these guys did it this way, and the Stoics did it this way, and the Japanese did it this way. So how do we fit that, as James said, into me right now? What can I take? What are the best lessons I can take from that, and what can I try to move forward to find my sense of purpose, whether it's God, religion, my cat, work, my children, whatever it is. What lessons can I learn from these people? Which I think is a nice segue into what I always like to do. What I'm trying to do is give people some actionable steps that maybe you can try to go forward, because this conversation can be a bit abstract as well, and people will be listening. And
well, I would say even now, I feel like we've said an awful lot without saying anything actionable potentially. Right now,
maybe, We've maybe Navala's given some actionable steps there.
Well,
we definitely haven't given anything.
Oh, yeah.
James has given some a nice bit of perspective there. People can go look up. What was it called, James?
Ikigai.
People can go look that up. And but if we were to look at some steps that potentially people could take, and to be fair, like you do this. I don't want to mention Telos again, because I'm going to keep plugging your fucking company, but I just did. You do this with people. You help them find more purpose in their life, and you give them a framework for doing that.
Yeah, well, even the framework we use, because actually, so our framework, we have a coaching framework for Telos, and the Live with Purpose section essentially is accountability.
Okay.
So that's what it is, and you'll notice, we all notice, when we invest in ourselves and we have a coach, they're holding us to a higher standard, and we often do better work. Yeah. So it's a simple thing. But what we found in the industry is that people then aren't taught how to keep themselves accountable.
Yeah.
So our Live with Purpose framework are different systems and standards that I use myself, that we've used in many different facets of our life to keep ourselves accountable. So that's all we do. We help people in, again, different areas of their life to keep themselves accountable. So there's loads in terms of what we do, but a really simple thing, and Naval talks about this, is just finding something that comes natural to you. So it looks like work, or it's very difficult for someone on the outside, but for you, you have an interest, or you have a desire, or you maybe have an application, maybe you're very good at doing it. Basically, just explore more down that avenue. Because oftentimes for me, that's been the biggest thing, where it's like, oh, there's an interest here. And then I'll go back to it. During the difficult times, I'll actually work through this. So exercise was a big thing for me when I was younger. I only got into it in terms of professionally around 22, 23. But like sport and activity was something that I did value from a young age with my parents. I found it pretty easy to go out and play sport and do all this stuff. So again, for me to go in this industry would kind of make sense, because it's like, oh yeah, I do probably find it easier than most people to get these things done. Still have resistance, as I mentioned, but definitely found it kind of easier. And a lot of the stuff that I do now, I would do for free anyway. So that's one aspect. It's basically the things that are easy to you, explore more. But a big thing then for me as well, like what does keep you up at night? And a lot of the things that I would watch on YouTube, or all the questions, the things that would keep me up at nighttime, are everything that I kind of do day to day now, and the stuff that I want to explore. The interest has always kind of been there. I remember being about 18, 19, 20, listening to YouTube and listening to Alan Watts. So this conversation we're having right now, I wanted to have 16 years ago, whatever age I am now, 36, but potentially didn't understand that I value that, or didn't have the experience or the education or the knowledge that I have now that I'm able to kind of go into. But it was certainly there. Like it was evident to me what keeps me up at nighttime in terms of kind of what I want to learn and what I want to explore. And the last one then I would say, let me just have it here because I have it written down, is this idea. So I keep mentioning that maybe you're given that North Star, but I don't believe it's this eureka moment that you need to wait for. I think it can help you. Like I said, psychedelics can help you, an accent can help you, being a father, like whatever the thing is can definitely help you, but you don't need to work for it. And regardless, even if you have that moment, still difficult. There's still plenty of fear and confusion and darkness is going to come. So as much as we're talking here right now, I'm telling you all the brilliant things I do, I just know there's much more difficulty on this path. So I feel more purposeful. I feel like I have much more meaning in my life. And there's more responsibility and there's more questions and there's more hardship and difficulty. But definitely, I'm much more empowered to kind of step forward into that. So again, go back to that it's not that I have all the answers and you're going to find all the answers if you keep leaning in this kind of way, but you'll definitely be more empowered to work through it all.
For someone who said they're not really sure where they stand, and that's a pretty well-rounded, comprehensive.
Well, do you know what? Even this conversation is going to help me get a bit clearer about it.
That's good. Hopefully, have someone else then.
And what about you then?
I'm going to fly through these very, very quickly. Obviously, the big one, first of all, and a lot of these will cross over, reflect on your values. Until you know exactly what you value and what makes you feel good and what gives you that sense of purpose and meaning, it's going to be very hard to live your life in a line with those values. So for me, some sort of reflection practice. Now, it doesn't have to be prayer, meditation, breathwork, psychedelics, exercise. It could be any of those. It could be none of those. It could be going for a walk. It could be sitting with a cup of tea. I've said this since day one on this podcast as well. Find whatever is easy, the simplest version of that for you, but use it actively to reflect and ask yourself those questions. I never did this. And now I'm starting to do it more, asking myself, like, what do I actually value? I say I want to be a good father, but what are the values that make me want to be a good father? Like, why do I want to be a good father? What's the whole point of this? And then when I figure that out, it's easier to do the things like you mentioned about the workout earlier on. Embracing the present. Again, getting distracted is a big problem of mine by the future and by the what ifs and the what ifs and the past and the present. And being able to have, again, some format for embracing the present, something you tell yourself. It was interesting that we're playing championship football at the moment. My manager's kind of talking about a lot of different techniques and strategies like elite athletes would use. And sometimes you see rugby players with a band on their wrist and they'll flick it, or something written on a piece of tape on their wrist. And it's a strategy to bring them back into the present moment and remind them that this is what I'm doing right now. So even having something small like that for yourself in your day-to-day job or in your life that reminds you and brings you back to the present, like be present. It could be a mantra, something you say, something you do, something you see.
I love that band. You can just tap and go, oh, wait a second.
Apparently a lot of the rugby players or basketball players do it.
That's brilliant.
It just brings you back to, oh, this is what I'm doing here. So having something that you can actively do that will help you with this outcome of trying to figure out your values or live in line with your values. Exploring and learning. So like new experiences, try something new and don't be afraid of being terrible. I had a conversation this morning. I always do when people want to start podcasts and we're trying to help them get started up. And all these different things, should I have big guests on and get this off the floor straight away? And I'm like, just embrace the fact that you're going to be shit at the start. I was shit. I'm still shit, but I'm less shit than I was at the start. Embrace that. It's part of the process, and then you'll enjoy it more and it'll give much more meaning to what you're doing with this podcast, project, business, relationship, whatever. Step outside that comfort zone. Pick something as an actionable step. Pick something. Can be tiny, can be huge, but that is a little bit outside your comfort zone, and that will help you with this idea of finding meaning, because it'll give you new experiences. And it'll also give you the chance to not be great at something, but to find meaning in, I'm not the best at this thing, but I'm trying something new and this is why I'm doing it. So big thing for me, explore, learn, try something new. This is kind of linked in with the first one, define your own form of success. It's more of a goal-oriented thing, but it starts off with defining your values and then decide where you'd like those values to bring you. But it's intrinsic, not extrinsic. If it's the car, make very, very sure it's because you love cars and it means something to you and it's a symbol intrinsically for you of something. It's not that you're going to have more respect from people in society because you have the car. It's not an external indicator. And then gratitude, kind of balance, spirituality, these are all come from the same idea of stillness and peace. Having, again, something that you can do regularly to help you remember that you're grateful, because you are grateful for things, but to help you remember that. So some sort of stillness practice. And again, I mentioned loads of them earlier on, but whatever's easy for you. And then the last two, service to others just seems to be a reliable, repeatable source of kind of purpose and meaning for people. It just seems to be across the decades and eons of data that we have and stories. Usually when you do something good for other people, you feel good yourself. So that can give you a sense of purpose. I know Gandhi was big on this as well. I'm not going to try any Gandhi quotes out because I was butchering him, but he's the kind of guy you think about when it comes to Mother Teresa, these type of people who are like selfless. You don't have to go and be completely selfless, but an element of servitude to the greater than. And this is where the greater than comes in for me. This idea of the collective comes in for me. There's more than just me. So if I can contribute to that, if it's just a kind word or helping someone across the street or whatever, if I can contribute to that within my family unit and outside, I'm going to get a great sense of peace and fulfillment from that as well. That just seems to be a repeatable kind of one that most people will get some sort of sense of gratitude and purpose and meaning from that, I believe anyway. And then the last thing, embrace challenge. Kind of the same as stepping outside the comfort zone, but like challenge, that idea of adversity. On the far side of adversity, there are rewards, and those rewards will lead to potentially you being able to take on more adversity. So it's a positive sum game, but yeah, the adversity thing is a big one, and willingly leaning into that whole idea of embracing discomfort, lean into it, because there's going to be, and it's not a selfish thing. Like we're searching for meaning, so there's going to be more meaning on the far side of it, as opposed to meaningless suffering. And some people get caught in this sometimes with the Goggins and the stuff like this. I'm a fan of Goggins now, but a lot of the messaging is just around like just suffer and get through it. But we have to attach the meaning to that as well, as you said earlier on, hating the workout, but then understanding that this is what it means to me and my life and my kids and my family. So there's some steps.
And just the last thing there, because you actually mentioned infinite there, and I think it's a very important thing, certainly for me, and I think in general, it is infinite. There's no real end to this.
Simon Sinek, the infinite game.
Yeah, but there's no real end to this meaning or purpose until there is an end, i.e. we're not here. So I don't think we ever complete it. I don't think we'll ever stop working on everything you're mentioning there, because I don't think there is an end. And then when there is an end, sure, we're gone and we don't remember. And regardless, if we are going to go to God, we'll be looked after or not. And if not, we're not. Like I think someone said to me now, when I was afraid in my 20s of the nothingness and the death, but sure, I don't remember not being born. So I'm not going to necessarily be conscious in this darkness,
Yeah.
you know. Which
all
is,
you have is right now.
Yeah, which is crazy.
There might not be, maybe there is, but there might not be an afterlife. So right now.
So I think finally then what all this conversation gives me and you certainly is the ability to live more intentfully day to day. I think that's kind of what I get from that kind of purpose and that meaning. I'm certainly more intentful with my action steps, and that hopefully brings more presence into my life.
Beautiful. It also gives us 76 minutes to listen to our own voices again.
Oh, Christ almighty. God love people who listen to this. I'm sorry. I apologise.
Well, thank you very much once again, Brian. Thank you, James, for your very insightful input there. Thank you to the listeners. And let's keep searching for that old meaning and purpose.
Thank you, sir.
See you in the next one.
Talk to you.
Peace.